So you find yourself being your own harshest critic. Your self-talk is pretty negative and pessimistic, and every time you try to change, you try to lose weight, you try to transform and become more confident in your own skin, that little voice jumps up and tells you you're not good enough, you can't do it, or whatever that story might be for you. Well, in this video, I want to explain to you how there is actually so much gold in that little negative voice, and when you can understand where it's coming from and how to dissect it properly, you might be able to discover the root cause to all of your challenges, limitations, and insecurities. Right now, before I get into that part, I want you to actually understand why this voice is there in the first place. Whenever we have this harsh inner critic, that is coming from a place of ego, right? And it will often pop up when we're actually trying to do the right thing. We're trying to be consistent with our training. We're trying to eat better. We're trying to love ourselves more and love what we see in the mirror. We're trying to show up better in our relationship. Whenever we are actually attempting to make progress, to become better in some way, that little voice is quick to jump in, right? So why does this happen? Well, what we need to understand is that we have lived, or you have lived a certain way for a certain number of years, right? You have been a certain version of yourself. And our ego creates a concept of self around that, and that has become our identity, right? We are the bigger guy or girl. We are the guy or girl that never feels confident in their own skin. We are the guy or girl who has no luck in relationships, that can't make any money, that can never lose the weight, whatever it might be. Our ego creates an identity around this, and therefore we create a life around this. So whenever we then go to change that, we are essentially threatening how we have lived for so long. We are threatening our comfort zone. We are seeking to step out into the unknown, which our ego deems to be scary because it doesn't know what is going to happen, right? It's spent so long living a certain way with certain belief systems, certain thoughts, certain feelings and emotions, certain reactions, certain actions, and certain results. And that is who it sees us as. So it will do whatever it needs to do to protect that. So whenever we go to change and maybe sign up with a coach, or as I said, start a weight loss journey or whatever it might be, it wants to stop that. So the easiest way that it knows how to do that is to fill you with doubt, fill you with negativity and pessimism. And that is where that inner critic, right, really comes out to play, because it's like, oh, are you sure you want to do that? Do you remember all the times you failed? Do you remember when so-and-so said this to you, right? Do you remember when you tried and then you realized that you weren't good enough and you couldn't do it and you just gave up? Yeah, well, who's to say that that won't happen again, right? It'll tell you whatever lie it needs to tell you to keep you stuck as you are, right? And it's really hard to wrap our heads around that, right? Because if you don't know that that's how ego operates, you just believe that that is your truth, right? You just believe that little voice in your head and it becomes your reality. It becomes your truth. And if you don't ever challenge it, that's the way things are going to be forever, which is why people struggle with body dysmorphia, body image insecurities, confidence issues. They can never be consistent with anything because every time they try to change, a little voice jumps up and then they go off track, they self-sabotage, and they end up staying exactly as they are, which is a massive win or a massive tick for our ego, right? So that's where the negative side of that inner critic comes from, and it is there to try and protect us. So it's not actually doing a bad thing, it's just consciously to us, we want to change, but our ego doesn't want us to change, so we need to learn how to override this. Now, I said at the start of the video, there is actually some gold in your inner critic, and this is what I mean, and this is what I truly believe is happening. I believe, as I said, we have our ego, which is our concept of self, and we have our true self, so who we actually are deep down. And I believe our true self that doesn't want to live with these limitations, that doesn't want to live with these insecurities, that doesn't want to live with these negative thoughts and beliefs and us not being able to change and get better, it uses this inner critic as an alarm system to let us know that we are still believing something that isn't true about ourselves, that we are still making a decision that is out of alignment with who we truly are. So every time we started, say, a weight loss journey and we fall off track and that voice wants to jump in and say, see, you're a failure, I believe our true self is using that to be, hey, you are still believing the lie that you are a failure. You are still believing these things about you that aren't actually true. And if you could just see this, if you could just start to make a new decision and change this level of thinking, you would be able to get back on track with your training, nutrition, lose the weight, and you would see just how powerful and capable you actually are. So every time, this is what I tell my clients, and this is what I do for myself as well. Every time I hear that little voice of doubt, any kind of negativity, any kind of pessimism when I'm thinking about maybe stuff for business, stuff for videos, stuff with my own body, stuff in my relationships, or the big goals and vision that I have for my life. If I ever am thinking about that or doing it or whatever, and I have that little voice that is trying to tell me I can't do it or fills me with doubt in any way, I'm like, okay, that's ego jumping in to try and stop me because it's scary, because me growing and achieving these things, there's a lot of unknown about it, which it tries to protect us against. Okay, cool. That's my ego. That's not me. And I'm clearly still believing something about myself that isn't actually true, right? My true self is like, hey, just a reminder that you still got that old limiting belief around what you can do with your body or what you can do with your business or whatever it might be, right? So let's spend some time sitting down to find the evidence to support the fact that you are actually capable, right? And that's the last piece of this. Whenever you hear that inner critic, it is alerting you to that negative belief system or that lie you have. The best thing to do is to spend time with your journal or on your phone, whatever works for you, and write down all the evidence to support the opposite of that. So all the times you have been successful, all the times you have been consistent, all the times you have been really confident in your skin, in clothing, on a date, in your relationship, whatever that might be. Sit down and write evidence to support the opposite of what that inner critic is trying to tell you. And the more you do this, the more you get on top of this, that little voice doesn't have power over you anymore, for one, and two, it starts to actually change. Because now you're building evidence and you're creating new belief systems and a level of thinking that whenever you set out to achieve whatever it is, you're going to be flooded with all the evidence that you can do this. And it'll still be scary. The ego will still try and jump up and warn you, but you'll be able to dismiss that and realize that there is gold in that voice. Dissect it, find the evidence, and use that to empower you and motivate you to take action and to not hold yourself back. All right, so yeah, if you have any questions with that, feel free to drop them below in the comments. But it just takes a little perception shift, right? If that negative self-talk just feels like it just is never going to get better, I promise you it can and it will. I just need you to start looking at it in a different way. There is gold in there. Understand what it is trying to alert you to. Understand that it's ego trying to stop you, right? And that's exactly why you need to keep going. It's exactly why you need to sit and find the evidence to dismiss it as a lie and continue on moving forward, right? As I said, questions in the comments down below. If you want to have your own inner critic dissected a little bit more, I run a free Telegram community where I'm answering Q&As like this all the time, where I'm giving advice and where I'm dropping daily voice notes on topics like this and giving my insight. So that is linked down below as well. I hope you found this video useful, and we'll see you in the next one.